Mona Lisa Overdrive is the sequel to Count Zero, which is the sequel to Neuromancer. It was published in 1988 by William Gibson. I'm going to do a deep dive into Mona Lisa Overdrive, but given how intricately woven this trilogy is, there will be heavy spoilers for both Neuromancer and Count Zero. So a little bit of recap. At the end of Neuromancer, we learned that the heist was actually orchestrated by an AI named Wintermute, one that was created by the Tessier Ashpool dynasty, these people who live out in low Earth orbit doing all these crazy fucking things, and they have like a resort out there and stuff. The entire heist was all about breaking out its other half, essentially, another AI that was created by the Tessier Ashpools, whose name was Neuromancer. Now, its goal in doing this was to form one being, but instead of coming together and forming one entity, they split apart into this grand pantheon of AIs called the Loa, or the Voodoo Gods. Also, one other big thing at the end of Neuromancer that we learned was that there is a separate cyberspace that was detected, one that does not originate on Earth, but Alpha Centauri. And then in Count Zero, we follow a character named Turner, this mercenary who's hired to extract this girl named Angie Mitchell from Moss Biolabs. And Moss Biolabs see Angie as nothing more than this asset amongst their monopoly on biochip technology. And this is actually because of Angie's father, who's the genius scientist who is apparently responsible for biosoft technology coming into existence. He actually implanted Angie with brain implants that allow her to connect directly to cyberspace, directly to the Matrix, without using a deck. But her father wasn't a genius after all. In fact, the Loa were the ones who handed this information to him. They described how to create biosoft technology, and all they asked for in return was his daughter. So the Loa are the ones truly responsible for the brain implants in Angie's head. And that's how these godlike entities are able to tap into her mind and communicate to her, and many times through her, as she speaks in their voices, almost like multiple personalities. She's got, like blood coming down her nose and out of her ears, like Eleven from Stranger Things, I guess. So at the end of that second novel, Angie is believed to have been a Loa herself, like a physical manifestation of one of the Loa. She also falls in love with one of our other POV characters right at the end, someone named Bobby Newmark, whose handle is Count Zero. Now, Bobby is an aspiring cyberspace cowboy, and when he's on his first run with hacking, he's just got his first deck, he's jacked in, he's confronted with this state-of-the-art ICE protocol. And ICE in this novel is essentially like a cybersecurity, but with people who can sort of like physically put their consciousness into cyberspace, into a matrix of sorts. They can be killed by these things. But at the last second, as his heart is about to be stopped, he's saved by what he sees as a cyberspace angel. It's one of the Loa. This happens to be Angie. So anyways, their love blossoms over the next few years, and Angie becomes the next big celebrity, the next big star on the SenseNet. It's Sense/Net. It's this episodic, fully immersive entertainment network that people use decks to jack into. They are able to experience these idyllic fantasies in the first-person perspective that are at least partially built using live actors. So they're not just watching Angie, they're living as Angie with all five senses. Yeah, it's like a futuristic soap opera that people become legitimately addicted to, and they live that life more than they live their own life. But of course, Angie's real life is nothing like this, and we really dive into that deeply with this third novel, which we're finally gonna jump into here. So Mona Lisa Overdrive starts off with Angie, who's reached the highest level of celebrity. Everyone's fucking obsessed with her. And where's Bobby? Well, in between the 7 or so years between these novels, they've actually split up, which definitely frustrated me a little bit, but Gibson knows what he's doing. He's trying to invoke a response here, but don't worry, Bobby Newmark, Count Zero, is still a very important character in this novel. He's pivotal, but he's just in a different POV, and I don't want to ruin the resolution that occurs here. So Angie has just come out of rehab, actually, after coming off of a highly addictive substance, one that was tailored specifically for her. And it actually has no drawbacks, no negatives whatsoever, but it also comes with no high. At many points in the book, the question is asked, why did she ever start taking it? And just as importantly, why did she ever quit? It just didn't feel right to her for some way or another. She knew she needed to get off of it. One thing that substance did, perhaps indirectly, is cut off her connection to the Loa, cut off her connection to cyberspace that's innate because of her brain implants. So she's back home in Malibu, detoxing, trying to take a little bit of a break from her career. And she has like these drones that are constantly following her, checking in on her. She's called all the time by her managers. But she's alone here, and she needs that alone time. The only thing really breaking her solitude is this AI. It's not one of the Loa. It's actually much newer. It's created after all the Loa. It's like a management program for the SenseNet called Continuity. It sort of almost works just like an Alexa or Siri, just very helpful, just answers her questions. Anyway, she decides to go on a walk at night on the beach. Her house is right on the beach there. And she's thinking a lot about Bobby. She's thinking a lot about the past. She's wondering what the hell happened between them. And as she's walking, she feels something in her jacket pocket. It's a familiar sort of baggie. And she realizes instantly, this is the drug that she's just worked so hard to cut out of her life. Someone has planted it on her. And as she touches it, there's like this immediate thought in her mind that she just wants to use it. Her mind goes through the actions of using it. But at the same time, one of the Loa at last contacts her for the first time in forever. And with it, of course, she has this nosebleed. She falls down to the ground, and the drones, they zoom up to her and they're watching like, what the fuck's going on? And without pulling it out of her pocket, without giving away what's happening, she rushes back home and gives them sort of an excuse to leave her the hell alone. And it takes everything for her to throw that baggie into the toilet, and then everything once more to actually flush that toilet. She decides to keep this to herself, as she has no idea who could have planted it on her. Was it her manager or the president who'd come and visited her once? She has a lot of ideas. It could be fucking anybody. Now, as time goes on, she becomes intrigued, to say the least, about the Tessir Ashpool dynasty. And she watches a sort of like a SenseNet sort of documentary on the subject. And she has this inclination, perhaps because of her deepening connection, her deepening innate connection back to cyberspace, to contact the director and tell him that the murderer for Lady Ashpool is 3 Jane. Now, who is 3 Jane? Well, she's not exactly the Tessir Ashpool daughter. She's actually a clone of their daughter. As her name implies, 3 Jane is the 3rd clone of Jane. Now, this is a super weird family, and they do things in super weird ways. So they take turns with each one of these clones, pulling them out of cryo-freezing, having them run the company and run the resort and take on all these responsibilities, like keeping AIs like Neuromancer in check, like making sure that it's locked down and no one gets access to it because it's theirs. And then they go back into cryo-freeze after 15, 20 years and have another one of the Janes come and do that. Now, 3 Jane has gone fucking insane. She's like 100% nuts. And I don't want to tell you much more about her because I don't want to ruin things. Now, unlike Neuromancer, but like with Count Zero, this book has multiple POVs, which is great. It helps expand the world quite a bit. And I bet you're assuming that the next one's going to be Bobby Newmark. Where is Bobby Newmark? Well, to answer that, we are going to have to look at Slick Henry's POV. Now, Slick lives out in a secluded place called the Factory, in a poisoned land dotted with abandoned manufacturing plants and rusted dumps. And at the Factory, he builds what can only be described as battle robots, but not for battle. He does it more out of artistry. It's more of a therapy for him. And I think many artists can understand where this guy's coming from. With each screw he tightens on the judge's scavenged frame, and with each flamethrower he mounts to the investigators, he builds a new memory. And this is incredibly important to Slick because he used to be a car thief, and he was imprisoned and punished for this. But in his imprisonment, he did some time, but he also lost that time. So he was subject to chemical punishment. So while it might sound nice to be able to instantly forget about the time he spent locked up, it's like he actually lost 3 years of his life. It's just fucking gone. And the horrible thing about that is that there are these side effects that have lingered consistently since then. In times of stress, he blacks out and loses time. It's completely gone, and the reader loses that time with him. So you have these just like blank spots where he just fucking wakes up and he's like, what the hell just happened? But he can remember where each scavenged component for his inventions, his sculptures come from. They're these like monuments of memory for him, and they mean so much. I think I sort of see music as the same way when I write songs. It's like this journal that proves that a moment existed. Anyway, Slick lives out at Factory with this little racist punk named Little Bird. But more importantly, he also lives with an addict named Gentry. Now, this guy is reclusive as all hell. Now, Gentry is the one who has illegally rerouted power to come to Factory, giving them lights, giving them heat through this cold winter. And Slick sees Factory as Gentry's own. He sees Factory as Gentry's place. Gentry is also obsessed with this concept of finding out what the shape of cyberspace is, like the totality of cyberspace. He wants to know the shape of it for some reason. And Slick believes that Gentry, every thought of Gentry's is influenced by this obsession, and he believes this is why Gentry is completely nuts. Then one day, a guy named Kid Africa shows up at Factory while Gentry is gone and drops off this dude who's been like hooked up perhaps into cyberspace for this prolonged period of time, this comatose, emaciated dude who's just fucking drooling, and says, hey, I need you to look after this guy. And Slick can't say no, because you see, he has to return a favor to Kid Africa, because at one point he was in the Sprawl and held out over an open window on a skyscraper, and he was about to be dropped, and Kid Africa is the only one who stopped these guys from doing that. And we come to find that this comatose individual is known as none other than Count Zero. It's Bobby Newmark, and something is seriously wrong here. Now, this isn't the only person that Kid Africa has dropped off. He also drops off a girl named Cherry Chesterfield, who is sort of like med tech. She's like a dropout med tech. Something happened, but she's looking after Bobby. And she knows nothing about this guy. She knows nothing about what the situation is happening here. To Slick, to Gentry, to Cherry, they're just helping out this random person who's hooked up in this, trying to keep him alive. And Bobby is pushing his body. He's pushing himself to this extreme. He's like just right on the fringe of death, but it's like a chosen thing. He's choosing to jack into this device that is known as an Aleph. So it's not cyberspace. It's not a matrix. It's called an Aleph, and it's sort of like this external hard drive that has something like cyberspace in it. So he's existing in it. His consciousness is within it. But I don't want to tell you anything more about that because it will ruin things if I tell you any more. And one thing about Cherry Chesterfield, she wears like way too many jackets, and the way she's described, I saw her chewing bubblegum before Gibson ever described her chewing bubblegum. He's so fucking good with characters that he can just like beam stuff into your mind and it's like already there before he even writes anything. Now, Gentry shows up, and at first he's like, get these people out of here. But then he notices the Aleph and he recognizes what it is. And he doesn't describe what it is. And he thinks that the best course of action here is to jack into the Aleph and find out what's going on. And he wants Slick to do it. Meanwhile, Angie is wondering where Bobby has gone. He's just disappeared off the radar, and she has no idea that he's putting himself through this shit. And also, she's on this collision course with a character named Mona Lisa. Mona Lisa Overdrive, we got our titular character here. She looked at the face in the mirror and tried on that famous smile. Mona is a prostitute from Cleveland working out of Florida, and she is what you call sinless, S-I-N-less. It's singular identification number. It's something that she doesn't have. So her entire life has sort of been undocumented. And she's already been through so much at this like heartbreakingly young age. And Gibson has like very powerful ethics. Like he has like great morals, and he portrays this in a way that just is so sad, so incredibly sad. You can tell he almost hates himself for putting this character through this. But you know, she doesn't have like the demeanor of someone going through what she's going through. She's actually extremely innocent in it, but she is addicted to a substance called whiz that is adjacent to many real-world uppers. She's fallen into this comfortable cycle of taking in clients and then going back to her pimp/boyfriend's house. She sees him as a boyfriend. He sees her as just another get-rich-quick scheme. And when I say house, I really mean hotel room, to go back to the hotel room. And he gets off on her describing what she experienced with her clients. And it's this like sick thing. But then on the other hand, she purposefully exaggerates the stories because she knows what he wants to hear. She knows that he doesn't want to hear that she actually liked it or enjoyed anything. He wants her to say that she was abused, that she was hurt and everything, and he enjoys that. That's how much of a piece of shit her pimp. Clearly, Mona deserves a much better life. Perhaps one like her favorite Sim star, Angie. The one that she bears a striking resemblance to. And this is important for the plot. But why would anybody like Angie, with a life like that, and Robert Lanier for a boyfriend, want to do drugs? Anyway, one morning Eddie wakes her up and lets her know that he's struck gold. He shows her that he has $1,000, more than they've ever had before, and says, keep your earnings from last night, go buy yourself something nice to wear, but not work clothes this time. Get something really nice. And it turns out that they're about to leave Florida, finally, and she is so ecstatic about this. But Eddie doesn't understand the extent of what he's getting himself into, and perhaps they'll both get what they deserve. But did it wake, Kumiko wondered, when the alley was empty? Did its laser vision scan the silent fall of midnight snow? Finally, we have our last POV with Kumiko, a young Japanese girl whose father is very high up in the Yakuza. She has just been sent to London to live with a few of his associates because of some power dynamics are shaking up. Some big things are happening in the world. And by the way, the Yakuza kind of exists globally. It's this massive thing in Gibson's universe. There's perhaps a gang war occurring back in Tokyo at this point. And she has this Biosoft sort of a handheld device on her, which sort of, as she touches it, spawns a ghost of sorts, this hologram that only she can see. In the character's name, he has the coolest name ever. He could use another L, but his name is Colin. And Colin is sort of programmed to make sure that she's safe, make sure that she gets from place to place without getting hurt and can get back home by the end of all this mess. And that's important because Kumiko must navigate this compound full of people who may or may not still be loyal to her father as these things are changing. You have all these things happening in other POVs, and those are having a direct effect on Kumiko's life. But she's soon taken under the wing by a character who we haven't seen since the first novel, someone we haven't seen in quite some time. But I don't want to tell you who that is. In fact, we get several characters returning in this novel to help deepen the connections to this entire story as a trilogy. And it works so well as a trilogy. But you're going to have to read to find out more. It's a delight, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But Kumiko's story is a bit disconnected from the other ones. It's less obvious how it's all connected, but it really is all one thing. You just have to piece it together. This book expects a lot from the reader, and that's important to understand. And just like how Neuromancer has the greatest opening line I've read in any book, Mona Lisa Overdrive has like the best closing page or paragraph of any book I've read. And it completes this trilogy in such a beautiful way. I was smiling for like a whole minute straight after closing the back cover just because of how much that elevated things. It just lit it on fire. It made me want to go back and read it from the very beginning. Now, each of these narratives might seem like an incongruent mess, but Gibson is actually using them to convey the super intelligent machinations of beings that a human mind cannot possibly understand. He's having to do this indirectly by connecting moments that may seem completely random or inconsequential and show that these are the linchpins on how the world moves according to these manipulations. The patterns are not of a human mind, and in that way, the characters here are like pieces on a board. And I was talking a little bit about the agency of characters in Count Zero, how you have one character who has agency in the beginning of the novel, and then that's handed to someone else, and that's handed to someone else. So this novel, it's clear that not a single character has agency. Well, one character has agency, but in her actions, in her forceful actions, as she breaks every rule, this is all expected. Every variable through this super intelligent consciousness is actually a constant. This book made me like Neuromancer and Count Zero even more than I did already. It is one cohesive story. People who tell you to stop after Neuromancer, they either didn't understand what this was all about, or they just have bad taste. And Gibson makes so many bold decisions in this novel, like how certain chapters he'll start with the word "and," as if the previous chapter was one concise statement, even though it was anything but. And then in the next chapter, he'll do it again, as if it's just this like list of some sort. And yes, while reading it, I did struggle. I struggled at certain points because it can feel like you're just meandering. But since finishing it, it's a book that I like more each and every day. As I'm thinking about it, it's one that sticks with you. It's got some serious value. The Sprawl trilogy as a whole is just masterful. And my goal with these last few videos has been to get as many people as I can to read it. It's been one of the highlights of my year, and I've read a lot of sci-fi these past few years, but this really stands out. This is one of the ones that I'm happiest to have chanced upon. So for next year, I am planning on reading Burning Chrome, perhaps even sooner than that. And I'm dead set on reading more William Gibson. I think he's just fantastic, and apparently he's written several other series that are relatively similar to the Sprawl trilogy. The Blue Ant trilogy is the one that I see some really great reviews on. But yes, I did release my debut novel, Lethal Circuit, which is a cyberpunk style novel, but in space with anti-gravity racing. I can't thank you guys enough for the support. See you next time.